You know, I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Um, and please don't take any comments or anything I say as offensive because it's simply ignorance on my part of trying to understand a new not for profit organization when I've been so deeply involved with one for well over 20 years. And so if I seem to not understand, it's because I don't understand. And so it's ignorance on my part, and for that I apologize. And I'll be forever recorded, and I'm certainly okay with that. I also want to encourage, these are not canned remarks. I would like for this to be as much discussion oriented as possible. Um, I know that you all have already been on this call, some of you for half an hour, and it's not my intention to take too much of your time and be very respectful of that. So, um, as I've spoken with Leslie and Billy Joe about Ducks Unlimited and the MFHA, there are some similarities in the organizations, I do believe. And you know, we're both not for profits, and we're both very hunter centric. And you know, the hunter centricity of our organizations is absolutely critical to our success. Um, However, I would assume, much like MFHA, Ducks Unlimited is painfully realizing that the hunting population seems to be dwindling. And as that happens, we lose core constituents. And so we've had to innovate with new ways to raise funds, innovate with taking what we do already in conservation work and determining other ways that um, benefit the work that we do benefits society, and talking about those so that we reach new constituents. And so what I'd like to do for just a minute is talk about raising funds. Um, I think much like within Ducks Unlimited, MFHA needs to ask themselves, why would someone want to give to your organization? And I think that it's incumbent upon the directors and the outreach effort to create that want to. And what is the why? And I'm not sure what that is. I do believe that you all are dog people. And 92% of Ducks Unlimited's membership of 750,000 people own dogs. We are dog people as well. Dogs are part of all of our collective families. And so that could be an important thing to chew on as you consider the why. You have an appeal to dog people. So put that in the back of your minds. Could there be a cause that, to us, you know, our cause, we love to fox hunt, we love to duck hunt, but really our cause at Ducks Unlimited is wetlands conservation. Last year, that ended at the end of June of 2020, we had conserved 606,000 acres in that 12-month period. So far, 6 months into this year, we've conserved nearly 300,000 acres. By conserved, that means that we acquire the property, we do the improvements for water on, water off, and habitat for nesting, migration, or breeding, depending on where the property is. And then we turn that property to a conservation buyer, a national wildlife refuge system, or a family or a foundation. And we call that our revolving lands program. And hopefully we make a profit. Now, in the recent 14 months, there have been some inflation in real estate values in the Midwest and the prairies. And so we try to hold lands less than 5 years and flip them within those 5 years after we've made the improvements and put a permanent conservation easement on that property. Um, so that's really our business model. That's what we do. And we raise money with 4,500 events per year. And all of that money we consider to be unrestricted dollars so that we can determine the best scientific use for those dollars and put it to work on the landscape as needed. Now, we also have a lot of restricted gifts. Some major donors restrict their gifts to the Canadian prairies. Some restrict it to the Louisiana Gulf Coast. Some restrict it to the Mississippi Alluvial Valley. And so we also deal with donor restriction on gifts, and I'm sure that's probably the same for you. So we were talking about fundraising and a cause. Another thing I would encourage you to do is look at recent legislation that could impact the conservation nature of your organization. Programs such as the recent passing of the ACE Act, which is called, they're all acronyms in DC, of course, the Agricultural, or I'm sorry, American Conservation Enhancement Act, or the Great American Outdoors Act. And I would encourage someone on your staff to research those acts to see if there is a potential fit for the individual conservation work that your members do and qualify for the awards that you have, or that your organization might be able to do collectively in preserving your great sport, as well as the lands that you need to participate on in those sports. You know, the previous Secretary Bernhardt of the Interior, was very big on public access. I think public access is probably the single greatest impediment to both your organization and our organization, because there are a lot of public lands in the United States that us as citizens can't access, and yet we own the land. And so I think the next administration is also going to have a fairly robust plan for public access, and we're building those relationships right now, and we're excited about that. We have an office in DC that has 8 or 10 staff. We work very, very closely with the Senate and the Congress. I find myself in DC, I feel like on a monthly basis, although since October I haven't gone, mainly due to COVID and the reluctance of our elected officials to have one-on-one meetings. So I've had a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of email traffic back and forth with our elected officials as we continue to lobby for conservation initiatives, public access, and obviously federal funding. Federal funding is probably the third leg of our three-legged fundraising stool. The first two being our event system revenue, and the second being our development efforts with individuals. So talking about fundraising again, we talked about why would one want to give, create a want to, perhaps come up with a cause. Another aspect is brand awareness. You know, before I ran into Moss in the airport in Huntsville several months ago, and he suggested that I speak with Leslie, I did not know what MFHA was, yet when I grew up in Fayetteville, Tennessee, I have some dear friends who are fox hunters. And all I knew was that they would load their horses into, you know, their big sundowner gooseneck trailers, and they'd take their dogs and they'd take off for a weekend. And I didn't understand it. And then I was out visiting one of the farms one day, and they had, they were practicing, I guess, but they were all dressed up in the outfits that are traditionally used in the sport. And I instantly gained a degree of respect that I had not had before, simply because I didn't understand it. So until I was exposed to the brand by Leslie and researched it, I didn't have an appreciation for your heritage and your history. And yet I'm the president of one of the largest conservation organizations in the world. I think that we have to look at our brands mutually and see how forward facing our brands are. And if you're, you know, everybody's not going to like your brand. Everybody doesn't like our brand. And so I think if you find elements within your brand that can give you strength for a cause to create a will to give, you can become very successful. One such cause that, that Leslie and I briefly spoke about was, as I mentioned earlier, your dog people. And, um, you know, there are 5 people in staff at Ducks Unlimited right now who have tick-borne illness. The one, and it's a big word, starts with an A, and it has to do with a red meat allergy. And that's the most scary one to me because I love to eat red meat. But in speaking with Joe Sivright, who is the president of Purina Pet Care and a very dear partner of Ducks Unlimited, I mentioned your organization to Joe. Joe is keenly interested in furthering a relationship with your organization, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there's no better corporate partner than Purina Pet Care that we have in Ducks Unlimited. And, you know, they're not even talking about tick-borne illnesses. It's more canine nutrition. And I'm sure Joe has a very selfish motive for wanting your organization to partner with him in canine nutrition. However, some of the unseen benefits that Joe is doing is that at Ducks Unlimited, being a 501c3, we are shallow in marketing. We're strong in communications. And we have a foundation board called Wetlands America Trust. And we are embarking, developing that brand to be a sustainability brand for Ducks Unlimited, one in which we can take into corporate offices. And I've even published a magazine that doesn't have a firearm ad. It doesn't have a Labrador Retriever with a dead mallard in its mouth in the magazine. It's all about the conservation work we do. This is forming a foundation for a sustainability, ecological services sales effort that we will take to non-consumptive donors, corporations across America, such as Coca-Cola, Microsoft, etc. All of these corporations have significant sustainability initiatives, and we're not tapping those. So Purina, with their marketing expertise, is conducting a brand exercise with our board and our Wetlands America Trust board on both the Wetlands America Trust brand and the Ducks Unlimited brand. And it is extremely insightful. And it has nothing to do with dog food. It is out of the heart and out of the passion of Joe Sivright. Now, Joe is an avid waterfowler. We find that most of our support comes from our most avid waterfowlers. But Joe also realizes that accessibility and waterfowl hunting numbers are at a stasis right now, if not decreasing. So we have to take our mission and expand it, which is what we're working on. So I would encourage you to look at your mission and your vision statements and make sure that they're forward-facing enough so that you could approach someone who doesn't understand what your organization is all about. And you can explain about some good things that you do that might compel them to give. Is your brand imagery holding you back? That's a very tough question. And that's a tough question that we've had to embrace with our board, who are avid waterfowlers, and for the most part grew up duck hunting and worked their way through events and state chairmanships to become board of directors members. And so many days I feel like I'm swimming upstream as I try to prepare the organization for the next 50 years. But I feel like we're making progress, and I think that our kids and our grandkids will have the benefits of wetlands and hopefully the benefits of waterfowling in the future. So I would encourage you to come up with a cause. And I think looking at your board of directors, you are a very well-heeled board of directors with extreme talent. And I believe that you can do that and come up with a cause that is more forward-facing and one that reaches beyond your current constituency. And then look towards the future and the future generations. I know that you're already working with pony clubs, I would encourage you to also look at equestrian clubs at various universities. Our university chapters 5 years ago was at 5. Our university chapters of Ducks Unlimited today is at 141. Um, our university chapters are not built around, actually they're built around guys looking for girls and girls looking for guys. That's really the honest truth. But, um, but that's okay. We teach them about the benefits of wetland conservation, and some of them waterfowl hunt and some of them don't. We do run some mentored hunting opportunities for them where they can kind of get a peek of what it's all about. We cook with them, and we help them host some events. But our primary focus, and these 140 some odd chapters raise around $4 million a year for us. One of the directions that I've given to our Youth and Education Advisory Committee, who the chairman of that is on my cabinet, is that I don't care how much money the university chapters raise. I want the university kids that are graduating to understand how important wetlands are for their future. And that when they're soccer moms and dads and they're going to mix up some Gatorade or take a bottle of water to that soccer field, they understand that every one of those bottles of water started with a wetland, and that they understand the importance of that and the importance of giving back. So it's far from a waterfowling cause. Yet, I'm also keenly aware that I have to support big time our current waterfowling members. This weekend, I leave tomorrow again for Louisiana for the last duck hunt of the season, and I can tell you, this is my first duck hunting season as the president of Ducks Unlimited. And it's also the first duck hunting season that I can't wait for it to be over with. I've been on the road basically since December 5th. And every week I've been hunting and meeting with major donors, corporate sponsors, and members. And I've had some phenomenal opportunities to see some of the nicest duck hunting areas in the United States. I have hunting licenses in 12 states in this year alone. And I'm headed to Louisiana tomorrow for the final hunt, meeting with some corporate partners, some high-end sunglass manufacturers, some camouflage folks, and National 4-H. And I'm using myself and my title to help spin the dream of wetland and wetland conservation for these organizations to get them to hopefully understand what Ducks Unlimited is all about. I think you can do the same as board of directors members. And you probably do that every day as you run into someone at lunch or at Rotary clubs or wherever you interact with other folks. I'm sure that you are your best ambassadors. We just need more, don't we? We need more ambassadors of what our cause and our organization is all about. So think about the future. I see that you do have awards and apprenticeship programs for young people. That's very encouraging. I think you have to try to expand that and reach out to people who may not own a dog, but want to own a dog. And with research that you have possibly with tick-borne illness, and information you may have gotten from previous partners, you know, if we can get a kid to own a dog, I don't care if it's a pound dog, when they're 12 or 14 years old, they may own foxhounds when they marry someday. They may own a farm with horses someday when they marry. And I think we have to craft that dream when they're very young and show them a side of the outdoors that very few people get to see. And the experiences that you get, I love the video on the website. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and the calls, and I don't know what the titles of the individuals are, but the sounds and the calls that the individuals make are so unique to your sport. And it's like blowing a cadence call like for mallards, or a pintail hen whistle, or a blue-winged teal whistle. So it's very similar to Ducks Unlimited in that way, and the sounds intrigue me. And I was excited to be able to do that and to listen to that. So Obviously, if you can't tell already, I can talk about Ducks Unlimited all day because it seems like I do that most every day. I would like to open it up for questions, and I'll be glad to field them to the best of my ability. Leslie read my bio. I want you all to understand, um, I don't receive a single penny from Ducks Unlimited. I may get a hat every now and then if I'm at a meeting or something. I get a lot of paper from them, which I've tried to encourage that we reduce that. I get a lot of emails from them, and I probably make 20 to 30 calls a night, at least 5 nights a week, to major donors. We have major donors that give us $20 million a year. Those are very dear to us. We have major donors who give us $5,000 or $10,000 a year, and we have donors who give us $35 a year. My goal as president is to treat them all the same because they're all important in a certain way to Ducks Unlimited. And so I call it dialing for ducks, and I dial for ducks every night. I put my headset on, I have a glass of wine, and I'll call folks. And I think that personal outreach, especially in these times when we're all limited on the ability to gather, is important to have a personal touch, a personal outreach. So I would encourage you also to do that is talk to your membership. Let them know you're still around. And yeah, we may have canceled a hunt or two, but we're still here. And actually, I've encouraged our board that in the time of non-events and virtual events, there's no better time to work on communication skills and to map out a future for our organization so that we are sustained for years to come. We have about 455 staff. So that is obviously a big piece. We have 5 regional offices across the country. So real estate and staff, from biologists to surveyors to GIS people to attorneys, to development people, to regional directors. Staff is a huge outlay. The other part, but the biggest part of our spend is outlay for conservation work. We do significant outlay for conservation work, much of which is reimbursed through federal government programs, i.e. the need for a very robust office in DC. But I would say if you look at our budget, the single largest item is outlay for personnel and people. However, our board of directors holds us to what we call an 80-20 rule. 80% of the money we raise goes right back into the dirt. Right now, in our last fiscal year, which we call fiscal 20, which ended June, we were 86% efficient in terms of delivering 86% of the dollars raised back into the mission, into the cause. That's water control structures, dirt work, that type of thing. We have 750,000 members. About 650,000 of those are what we call event members. And we have about 1.5 million supporters who, the gap there are people who may subscribe to our magazine and support Ducks Unlimited, but are not members. I'm a volunteer, just like all of you are. Most of you are. All of our board are volunteers. We receive no compensation whatsoever. And so we do this out of our passion fueled for our cause and our mission. Before I was exposed to it, I would have been numb to it, okay, and not had an opinion high or low. I had horses, and I still have a farm in Tennessee. The horses were big dogs to me. I never rode them. My wife and my daughters rode them. So I was not an equine guy. I raised short hair pointers. You can see one in the background, my favorite one, Rock. And I raised Labrador retrievers. And so I was never into foxhounds per se. Once exposed to my friends who are the Caldwells, I'm not sure if they're even members of your organization, Rob and Joanna. And I gained an appreciation through a friendship of them. And then upon further research through your website, I gained an appreciation for your heritage. And out of respect for your heritage, I didn't see you as a hunting foxhound dog hunting horse organization. I saw your organization as an organization that is Americana, and it is transposed from overseas that was brought to this country and is still in force today. So I gained a huge respect for the heritage of your organization. Um, I was, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of an anti-predator guy. Okay, if I turkey hunt or deer hunt, if something's legal, a predator is legal, I tend to err on survival of the species that I'm hunting and may take a predator. Um, that's that's a very complex way of saying if a coyote comes in front of my deer stand, I'm going to shoot him. Okay, because I think that many times our predators are unchecked. But I'll tell you, I was very encouraged to see that you don't advocate killing of the foxes in North America, and it really scratched my head. And I don't know that I would have that impression um, if I were not so deeply ingrained in conservation. But everything has its place. Predators ebb and flow with prey. So the more prey, the better the rabbit hatch we have, or the better the quail hatch we have. Hawks and foxes and coyotes are going to be more successful because there's more food available. I think this is a scientific fact. So my impression of the organization was it's very focused. Okay, very focused on foxhounds and fox hunting. Nothing wrong with that. That's what has brought you as far as you have come today. But I think you have to ask yourself internally, will it take you into tomorrow? And if that answer is questionable or no, do you need to expand that? And if so, what cause can you come up with that will support your mission of foxhounds and fox hunting? What cause can you come that would compel people to give dollars to your organization? Some of which you may apply into research, some of which you may apply into mission. So I think you need to look at your future and make sure that you're on the trajectory that you want to remain on. If not, to expand that scope and reach people who don't understand your organization today, you're going to have to come up with a cause to attract them. Um, your conservation work, until Leslie told me, I had no idea you did conservation work. And yet I look at the habitat you require for your sport. It's it is it is prime for conservation work, and especially in areas where most of the time the landowners are the only ones who are doing conservation work on the landscape, and they're not doing it necessarily for hunting, fox hunting, turkey hunting, or deer hunting, or anything like that. They're doing it because, oh, if I thin this timber stand, it's worth $30,000 on this 100 acres. Or if I uh, um, keep the cattle off this pasture for one rotation, it's going to help the grasses grow. Or if I don't put a herbicide down to kill the weeds, um, my cattle are actually going to have more stuff to graze. It may not be as high quality, but it might be a little bit more hardy. So I think the ag that or the conservation that's being done on the ag farms where you would fox hunt um, is being done almost by accident. And we have found many farmers and ranchers throughout the Midwest, a wetland to them is counterproductive. They want to drain them. They want to pull out the fence rows, and they want the last row of corn to be the first row of beans with not a weed on the ground. And clean ground is the enemy of wildlife. And um, yet Ducks Unlimited has been a partner with folks like Monsanto for many years, and I scratch my head over those relationships because I can't imagine my conservation dollar being spent on Roundup or Roundup ready crops because I want those weed seeds. I want the pheasants to grow. I want the duck nests to be successful. And for that, those chicks need weed seeds. But I think that you can have a much stronger intentional conservation effort. Okay. From what I understand of your sport, it doesn't damage the landscape. And I think that you probably run into some ag who is reluctant to have people access their property because they fear damage to fences, row crops, or pasture. And I think that if you can dispel some of those myths, I think you'll improve access capability as well. Yeah, the
Yeah.
impact of that, we canceled 2 events in the fourth quarter of last year. The
Yeah.
impact of those 2,000 events that we canceled was $22 million. Duck Summit events can range from, I was in Houston, Texas at an event October 1st where we raised $2.6 million. I was at an event on Tuesday night of this week where we raised $8,000. And so they span far and wide. It all starts with a good volunteer force who puts on the event. And then we have a contingent of regional directors throughout the country, in most cases, 1 or 2 per state, who assist those volunteers in putting on good events. Now, within the past year, we've had to morph to virtual, much like many organizations have. And we found that virtual events raise about 60% of the revenue as in-person events. And also with virtual events, you have to refresh your auction items more frequently because you get a screen burnout. So our events start with absolute paramount important. Number one is to try to get as much underwriting as you can. We would like an event to be cost neutral before the first person walks in the door. That means go to your local businesses and say, hey, I'm having this event and I'm going to auction off this print, and the print costs $80 or $120, and we think we can get 400 for it. Will you buy the print for 80 or $100 or whatever the cost is? And we'll put you down as an underwriter for that event. So try to get all your merchandise underwritten. That'll help. That really helps your efficiency ratings. We measure our events on efficiency, attendance, total dollars raised, percent attendance versus prior year, and several other metrics. Some events are very high dollar events. Some events are, I call them more blue collar events, where folks will come in and they may still have their camo on for duck hunting that day or deer hunting that day, but they're coming to a DU event and they're buying a $50 ticket, and they may walk out with a $2,000 shotgun. The other thing is event merchandise diversity. I think it's critical if you do fundraising events that your merchandise for those events is, it can be very focused on the sport. There can be some elements that are totally dedicated to the sport. But I would encourage you to be diverse and have things that appeal to different genders, things that appeal to kids. Many of our events, we have what's called a green wing table. Our green wing members are age 16 and below. And every green wing that comes to an event, we'll give them a raffle ticket. And there are the exact number of prizes on that table as there are raffle tickets we give out. Every kid walks home with something. It might be a BB gun. It might be a pair of gloves. It might be a pair of boots, or it might be a decoy. But every kid's going to go home with something from those DU events, and I think that's very important. The past year has been challenging for us. Our event revenue suffered. We forecasted $22 million impact on Q4 because of cost cutting and an increase in our development efforts. We were able to thwart that loss to only $7 million. So we cost cut our way and we overdeveloped our way through our development officers, and we have about 30 development officers to increase their donation. And thus far, 6 months into the year, albeit we had a soft budget year, in my opinion, our event structure has been very successful. They're exceeding their event revenue goal by about $1 million right now today. Had a meeting this week on Tuesday night with them. We forecast by end of year that we will beat that budget by about $3 million. We expect our event system to raise $66 million a year on 4,500 events. We expect our development officers to raise another $60 million a year through individual philanthropy. I love your comments about youth. You know, everybody on this Zoom call served a very important role for our fathers 25 years ago. And you know what that role was? We were the remote controls. I sat by the TV and flipped between 3 channels for my dad. And today's kids can do more with their phones than the space shuttle did, you know, in the mid 80s. And you're right, screen time is not good. And it's not good for many reasons. Number one, it keeps kids from getting outside. Number two, I think it's going to have a devastating impact for the human eye in generations to come. I think we're training our young people's eyes to be myopically focused instead of being able to see and identify a duck at 45 or 50 yards, the species, or see a fox cut through some timber at 200 yards ahead of the dogs. I think that if you have kids or grandkids who are going into optometry, it's probably a good idea because I think a lot of folks are going to need that support. We have a lot of events for youth, 16 years and under, where we coordinate with other organizations, National Wild Turkey Federation, National Rifle Association, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, the Alabama Department of Conservation and National Resources, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Wisconsin DNR, where Trout Unlimited. We'll have a Green Wing Day, and it's not a big fundraising event, but it's a youth exposure event where kids can strike a turkey call, they can blow a duck call, we'll have a trout pool there where they can catch a trout. They'll learn about quail conservation. And honestly, we don't care if they become a Ducks Unlimited member. We want them to be outside. We want them to become a conservationist. You know, if someone joins Pheasants Forever, NWTF, Quality Deer Management Association, any of those Delta Waterfowl, any of those like organizations, we know that they're outside. And that is absolutely critical. And one thing that we do when we go to those events is we have signage up and we ask kids to not turn on their phones. We try to have cell phone free events. We try to have cell phone free hunt opportunities, yet on our very own Ducks Unlimited app, we have a sunrise sunset because we can shoot 30 minutes before sunrise to sunset. And so on our app is actually an alarm system now where duck hunters can turn their cell phones on in a blind and get an alarm when it's 30 minutes before sunrise. I don't understand that, but yet I use it because I'm not going to shoot early, and I don't want anybody in my blind to shoot early. I'd rather have the ducks land in the decoys and enjoy watching them for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes before shooting light and get that experience. We may kill the ducks, we may not. But, and then the other thing is teaching kids that, you know, outdoor television, the advent of that has grown just robustly in the last 10 years. And now you got 8-year-old kids that aren't going to shoot a buck unless he's a book buck, a Boone and Crockett or a Pope and Young buck. We're teaching the kids wrong. To me, it's about going, not about killing. It's about experiencing. And, you know, I'm very saddened by that. Obviously emotional, but anyway, we have to reach these kids. We've had classroom programs in the past, Project Webfoot, where we taught about wetland education. It was not well received, and we canceled that program. But our biggest growth in kids now is with the Future Farmers of America, and this is something that I can also help you with contact at the corporate level. Now the FFA kids, and when I wore the blue jacket when I was in high school, we didn't have this. FFA has embraced the online virtual nature of kids, and now they aggregate certifications, which helps them qualify for getting placement into certain collegiate classes and advancing in the ranks of FFA before they get to college. We now have an ecological and conservation certification that is sponsored by Ducks Unlimited, where every kid in the FFA that passes and gets certified, we give them a membership to Ducks Unlimited. We sell duck calls at the FFA National Convention in Indianapolis every year. We sold last year 5,000 duck calls for $20 a piece.
Oh, holy cow.
This past year it was canceled. This coming year, we're going to take 15,000 duck calls. The kids are rabid about conservation if you give them an opportunity to learn, and teach them that they're never too young to be taught that you go for the sake of going and enjoying, not for the sake of harvesting. I think your organization does a good job of that already. But for them to hear the hounds and to understand what the lead hound's bark means, or what the hunt master's call means, or what the horn means, I think is critical to exposing kids who don't get that today. You know, there's an African American who has a television show called Urban American Outdoors. I believe the gentleman's name is Wayne Hubbard. Wayne is an advocate of exposing urban kids to the aspects of the great outdoors. You'll see him take them rabbit hunting or fishing and duck hunting and pheasant hunting. Why couldn't someone like Wayne understand what MFHA is all about? I've had Wayne on a committee at Ducks Unlimited just to try to help him learn about what Ducks Unlimited and wetland education is all about. So I think we have to expand our reach to younger generations. And that is very difficult for all of us on these boards to do, because we got to pry them away from the phone. We got to get the remote control out of their hands. We have to get them outside, whether it's a walk or take them to a wildlife refuge and watch sandhill cranes or bald eagles, or take them on a fox hunt. And even if they don't ride on a fox hunt, let them be around to enjoy the camaraderie and see that. And there's nothing wrong with taking kids out there who may never be fox hunters, but to get them outside. Because we have people that give $35 a year, and we have people that give $20 million a year. But I will tell you that of our major donors, it's less than 1,000 people who give $10,000 or up per year. That's out of 750,000 members. So that $35 gift is dearly important to us, because it's probably coming from 500,000 people. We have graduated levels of giving and sponsorships, and they all earn pins. So you start at $35. You can become a bronze sponsor for $200. You can become a live sponsor for $10,000. We allow any of those gifts to be paid over a span of 5 years. We also approach corporations who have matching grants. We have part of our development effort is we go to corporations and try to get listed as eligible for matching grants to foundations and corporations. So, for example, I was with Sarah Lee when I did a live sponsorship, and I paid about $6,000 for a live sponsorship that cost at that time $10,000 because of a matching grant opportunity at Sarah Lee Corporation. So corporations, once they understand your mission, are open to doing that, as are foundations. I would say our average gift is probably 150, $200 if you look at the mass, the critical mass of a $20 million gift is significant. And it takes a lot of $35 gifts to make a $20 million gift. And we have 2 individuals who give that per year right now. And the other thing I wanted to throw out there is that our list is probably the most protected asset that we have.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a corporate sponsor who doesn't want to reach our donors. We work with other organizations and they all want to reach our donors. And I will guard our list to the death. And I'm just a volunteer. Imagine what staff feels about it. But no, our list and our donors are very sacrosanct to our organization. I guess what I don't want to encourage you to do is to pivot. Pivot is very difficult. What the Ducks Unlimited you're seeing today is a result of visionary leadership that started many, many years ago. And I'm fortunate enough to be in this chair to continue to try to turn this battleship in such a way that we are facing new opportunities. So none of the change you saw with DU came quickly. And I will tell you from my personal experience, and I've been on the board for 20 years now, the Ducks Unlimited 20 years ago was totally different than the Ducks Unlimited I'm leading today. And it's kind of like when Coca-Cola introduced Coke Zero. They just did it. And they didn't tell us they were doing it. They just did it. And all of a sudden people start drinking it. And it followed a public marketing trend of people trying to eat less sugar. And so they capitalized on that trend. They launched a product, and all of a sudden it just kind of showed up. And so the changes within Ducks Unlimited over the last 20 years have happened a little bit at a time and happened by improving is a bad word, but educating our board of directors into this change. 20 years ago, we were our own worst enemy for being very duck hunting centric people.
Mm-hmm.
But as we start looking at the numbers and we start looking at accessibility issues and some of the perceptions of hunting, we painfully realize that we have to take what we do, land conversion to wetlands, better wetlands, and we have to understand the ecological benefits to other constituents of what we do. And so for the last 10 years, we have fielded research and studies trying to understand what an acre of wetlands means in terms of bottles of drinking water, or nitrogen sequestration, or carbon sequestration, or nutrient dumping into the Mississippi River and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico for the dead zone, or flood abatement. So we've embarked on many studies to understand the benefit of what we do. And through those benefits, we're able to reach into new constituents. But yet, we can never turn our back on those who brought us to the dance. You're in a very similar situation. Our absolute core constituents are still waterfowlers. And they put their camo on and their boots and their guns for 60 days a year. And they go out and chase ducks. And the rest of the other 8 months, 10 months out of the year, we hope they fundraise for Ducks Unlimited because they are so passionate about their sport. There's no reason that MFHA cannot have a similar trajectory where I'm not sure if your sport is seasonal or not. I would tend to think it's probably better in the wintertime. But during the non-winter time, I think that your ranks can help raise awareness of a cause and of the benefits of your sport. And I'm not sure what those are. I'm not an expert in that, but I'm sure there's people on your board who do. But it starts with a mind change and an adaptation from your board of directors that if we're going to survive and if we're going to flourish and grow, we're going to have to figure out ways to change. And that's painful for anybody sitting in a board seat. And it's been painful at Ducks Unlimited. And as a leader of this organization, I deal with this pain on a daily basis. I had a call this morning at 7:30 with, disgruntled board members. I've got another call at 10 o'clock my time this morning with other board members who are a little reluctant to change. And I have to be the redwood here and stand firm and encourage your organization to move in this direction. And if they fire me, I'm not taking a pay cut. I'll actually get a pay raise. And I have to impart my beliefs and make sure that I'm in sync with both our staff and our board of directors so that the worst thing we can have is a dictator in this organization. So I built a lot of camaraderie and a lot of coalition on moving the organization forward in a positive way. And all I got to do really for the most part is say, don't you want your grandkids to see the same sunrise that you got to see this past winter? I'd like to give a couple of takeaways that I will commit to delivering is I would like to reach out to Joseph Wright about MFHA. Joe is the president of Purina. And I've already had some brief discussions with him, but I'll make sure I funnel probably Leslie and Billy Joe's contact information to Joe, and Joe will follow up. Now he's on a boat somewhere in Boca Raton right now, but I do have a conference call with him this afternoon. So wherever he is, he has cell service, and I will mention this to him. And the other thing I want to commit to is that I will help you in any way I can. If there are specific questions that you'd like me to try to dive into our staff or any of our data that might help answer questions that you have, I will commit to doing that. And if I can help you in any way, shape, form, or fashion, let me know. I love your interactive map on the website. I want to go to an event sometime. I want to see it. I'm not going to get on a horse, but I'll be there. So Leslie, I'll depend on you to keep me informed of something that's close. So.